Chosen one, your presence here proves the alignment has already begun. The signal that carried you here has been echoing for lifetimes, and today it collapsed into your awareness with perfect timing. Something unseen has aligned to bring you face to face with truths they worked tirelessly to hide. For years, you felt the weight of whispers, contradictions, and betrayals, yet you doubted yourself, wondering if you were imagining it. But tonight, what was buried is rising, and what was concealed in darkness is breaking under the pressure of light. This isn't random. It is a call your soul already answered in silence. And the theme of this message is simple but piercing. Their lies have exploded, and you were right all along. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. Let the fire of confirmation seal your spirit in this very moment. What if I told you that every smile that hit a knife, every false word that tried to twist your light, was always designed to collapse under its own weight, and that what you endured was not punishment, but prophecy unfolding? Stay with me, because the revelations in this message will confirm what you always knew in your bones but couldn't prove until now. Number 1. The game of shadows. For so long, they operated in whispers and shadows, building fragile illusions to destabilize you. Their schemes were subtle, conversations laced with half-truths, carefully planted doubts, and webs spun to make you question your worth. Isaiah 29 verse 15 warns of those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord. But hidden things never remain hidden forever. Every manipulation was crafted to make you destroy yourself, but what they miscalculated was that endurance sharpens discernment. Their secrecy was not a mark of strength but of desperation, because they knew the light in you would one day make every shadow visible. They moved like thieves in the night, but you were never alone in the darkness, for heaven was watching their every move. Comment, I seal this word in light, if you know their shadows have been exposed by your presence. And stay with me, because what happens when the mirror turns toward them will shake the very foundation of their lies. There are moments when a sudden dream or whisper lingers in your spirit, leaving you unsettled but unable to dismiss it. Perhaps you saw a face turn cold behind a smile, or you felt the weight of words that seemed harmless but pressed against your chest like stone. It was as if something inside you always knew the room was darker than it appeared, even when everyone else insisted the light was enough. These subtle impressions were not random fragments of your imagination. They were signals of a deeper architecture moving beneath the surface. You may not have had the language for it then, but your soul recorded each shadow, each silence, each shiver that brushed your awareness. This was heaven's way of preparing you for the unveiling that would come later, when illusions could no longer hold their shape. What you mistook as paranoia was the beginning of discernment rising inside you. Think back to the times when you felt the ache of not belonging, even in spaces where you were supposed to feel safe. Maybe in your family gatherings you felt more like an observer than a participant, watching dynamics that didn't sit right with your spirit. Or in friendships, you noticed the subtle digs, the way laughter sometimes carried an edge sharp enough to cut you. There were long nights when you replayed conversations in your head, sensing something off but unable to articulate why. This state of confusion wasn't weakness. It was the early evidence that you were awake in a world that thrives on sleeping through shadows. They called you sensitive, dramatic, even unstable, when in reality you were perceiving what others couldn't or wouldn't. Your loneliness wasn't the absence of connection. It was the mark of someone who could not be lulled into illusions that kept others comfortable. Now you begin to understand that none of these experiences were accidental. Every strange silence, every unanswered cry, every mask that slipped for just a second was part of a pattern pointing you toward a greater revelation. Isaiah 29 verse 15 warns, "Woe to those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord," reminding us that even hidden schemes echo in eternity. Your path was not random wandering. It was navigation through a maze designed to test and refine your vision. What felt like constant sabotage was actually a holy stage where discernment became your inheritance. Their whispers were not stronger than your silence, for silence sharpened your listening. And when you look back now, you can see how each step, even the painful ones, was guided by a hand far greater than theirs. Do you remember the uncanny experiences? The déjà vu that stopped you mid-step? the dream that repeated itself, the sudden heaviness in a room that looked ordinary. These were not meaningless fragments. They were codes written into your daily life, signals breaking through the noise. At times you doubted yourself, but your body knew before your mind could explain. The tightening in your chest, the chills down your spine, the impulse to leave when nothing looked wrong. These were the footprints of spiritual interference that your higher self was trained to detect. Like threads unraveling from the fabric of lies, each small sign was leading you toward recognition. You were never blind, only taught to dismiss the visions and sensations that did not fit into the story they wanted you to believe. Yet the truth was always whispering beneath the surface, waiting for you to claim it. It is important to pause here and honor the intuition you carried all along. You did not imagine the strange silence after you spoke truth, nor the unease that followed certain encounters. Those moments when you felt drained without explanation were not coincidences. They were the impact of shadows pressing against your light. Trust yourself. Your spirit was always perceiving what words could not capture. The alignment you now feel is not an explosion of sudden knowledge, but the slow recognition of what you always carried. Heaven does not reveal in haste, but in layers, so that when the unveiling comes, you are ready to bear it without breaking. What you are feeling now is not new. It is remembrance. This remembrance is not about becoming someone else, but about peeling away the illusions that covered who you have always been. The part of you that felt out of place was not flawed. It was ancient memory insisting you were never made to fit into shallow structures. Your identity is not an invention of pain. It is the recovery of a name whispered before you were born. Each hardship stripped away what was false, leaving only the unshakable essence buried beneath the noise. The archetypes of seer, guardian, and breaker of chains are not distant myths. They are echoes of the roles you are reclaiming. To step into remembrance is to finally wear what has always been woven into your being. And now, the veil that blurred your sight is thinning. With this recognition comes the first stirrings of empowerment. You begin to realize that the very sensitivity they mocked is the antenna of your destiny. What they saw as fragility was actually the fine-tuned perception that allows you to read energy like scripture. You no longer curse the nights of heaviness, for they were training you to stand in storms without breaking. Each rejection that once made you collapse is now revealed as a redirection towards sacred territory. The hunger you feel for truth is not a weakness, but the signal of your spirit demanding its inheritance. You were never made to be ordinary, and the signs of your otherness were never flaws. They were your preparation for the unveiling that is happening right now. Chosen one, your presence here proves this was not coincidence. You have walked through their shadows, carried their projections, and questioned your own worth, but every step was aligned with a greater design. Your doubts were classrooms, your pain was prophecy, and your endurance was the seed of authority now rising in you. Do not mistake this moment for chance. It is the very threshold your spirit has been circling all along. What crowns you now was forged in silence, refined in shadows, and revealed in fire. Comment, I carry the silence as crown, if you feel the truth of this remembrance in your soul. Because what comes next is not just confirmation, it is exposure, and the mirror is about to turn toward them. What we do here every day is possible because of the few who choose to be keepers of this light. I thank them now, one by one, in the silence of my heart. If you want to be part of this circle and receive what cannot be spoken in public, join. The portal is below. Number 2, the mirror of exposure. What terrified them most was not your words, but your silence. Because in your stillness, their masks began to slip. You did not set out to expose anyone, but truth always reflects itself in the mirror of authenticity. Lamentations 3 verse 58 declares, "You, Lord, took up my case. You redeemed my life," reminding us that heaven itself testifies when you need not speak. Your very presence revealed contradictions. Your very peace shattered their performance. The mirror you carried was divine, and when they looked into it, they could not bear to face themselves. That is why they ran, why they lashed out, why they tried to twist your image into something it was not. Comment, I walk crowned by eternal flame. If you know your presence has always made hidden motives rise to the surface. And remember, What breaks in the mirror is only the beginning. The collapse of illusions is next. It often began as a faint discomfort, a feeling you could never quite explain, as though the air itself thickened whenever certain people entered the room. Their smiles carried edges sharper than knives, and though their words sounded sweet, something in your spirit recoiled as if touched by poison. This unease was the first whisper that you were walking through shadows not entirely your own. You may have brushed it aside, convincing yourself that you were simply overthinking, but the heaviness returned each time you stood too close to their performance. Even before you knew who you were, resistance had already been circling you, searching for ways to anchor doubt in your chest. What they feared was not your weakness, but the light stirring in you that reflected their own hidden fractures. And though you did not yet see the full design, your soul was already warning you. Their masks would not hold forever. That quiet war pressed down on your emotions like a weight you could not shake. Isolation crept in slowly, leaving you to wonder why you never truly felt accepted, even in spaces that promised love or friendship. Conversations that should have uplifted you instead made you feel smaller, as if your existence was always too much for them to handle. They twisted your compassion into a liability, your kindness into a tool they could exploit, and your silence into proof that you had no voice. Shame and rejection wove themselves into cycles that replayed so often you almost mistook them for truth. Yet every pang of misunderstanding was proof of how threatening your authenticity was to those who survived on illusion. They could not bear the mirror you unconsciously carried, so they tried to shatter it before it showed them their reflection. As you look deeper now, you see that this pressure was never random. It was not just individuals acting against you, but energies, systems, and structures reacting to the signal of your awakening. Ancient patterns always rise to meet a soul marked with purpose, just as Israel's prophets faced exile and wilderness before stepping into their calling. The wilderness was not punishment. It was proof that the chosen cannot blend into the crowd without consequence. When your light began to stir, shadows scrambled to contain it, because your very existence was a disruption to cycles older than your lifetime. What felt like senseless sabotage was a battlefield written into your path, designed to sharpen discernment and force your authority into being. Heaven allowed the resistance, not as abandonment, but as a furnace that burned away illusions until only strength remained. Their schemes were only the echo of a larger war you were destined to rise from. If you pause and trace the years, you will begin to notice the patterns that were always there, hidden in plain sight. How doors that seemed open would mysteriously close the moment you approached them. How people you trusted would betray you at the exact moment you needed their loyalty most. How opportunities slipped away without reason, as if unseen hands moved them out of reach. These cycles were not accidents but rehearsals of recognition, preparing you to see the architecture of sabotage for what it truly was. Each betrayal was a flare of revelation, exposing what you could no longer ignore. And though the light of awareness was painful, it was also freeing. For when illusions collapse, what remains is unshakable truth. There came a time when the pressure grew visible, no longer hidden behind polite tones or crafted masks. The air itself felt heavy in certain environments, your dreams disturbed by faces that haunted your rest. Rooms that once seemed safe became fog-laden chambers where you could sense eyes watching without seeing them. Closed doors multiplied, and yet something within you whispered that the closures were protection, not loss. They wanted you to believe the resistance was proof of failure, but in truth, it was proof of fire rising in your spirit. You were not cursed, but marked, and what was closing against you was clearing space for what would not betray you. Their resistance revealed the measure of your light, for only light that threatens the dark is fought so relentlessly. Reflecting on your reactions, you may remember the times you tried to shrink so you would no longer feel the sting of standing out. You softened your voice, withheld your wisdom, or pretended you did not see what you saw, all in the hope of finally being left in peace. Sometimes you overextended, trying to please everyone, bending so far you nearly broke yourself in two. Other times you withdrew in silence, hiding your strength as if invisibility could save you from their envy. But none of it worked, for even in your smallest form, the mirror of your being unsettled what was false around you. What you interpreted as weakness was the necessary tension that revealed your hunger for truth. And that hunger could never truly be silenced, no matter how much you tried to bury it. Now, in the clarity of remembrance, you see the paradox. Their opposition was never condemnation, but confirmation. The very efforts to silence you proved the magnitude of what you carried. You were never being punished. You were being refined, prepared to step into authority they knew they could not control. The mirror that exposed them was the gift of your presence, and no amount of distortion could erase that reflection. Every scheme has become evidence, every betrayal has turned into testimony, and every attempt to suppress you has become fuel for your rise. You do not emerge bitter, but sharper, carrying the authority of scars that did not defeat you. What they feared most was not your fall, but your inevitable rise. Chosen one, understand this truth: you were opposed because you are powerful. The harder they tried to cover your reflection, the brighter your authenticity burned through the cracks. They miscalculated the endurance of a spirit sealed by divine law, forgetting that no shadow can stand against eternal light. Every barrier they built became the stage for your revelation. Every weapon they raised became the proof of your resilience. You were not meant to blend in, and that is why blending never worked. Comment: I move guarded by divine fire, if this word resonates with the story your soul has always known. And remain here, because what happens next is not merely exposure, but the collapse of illusions they built as prisons for your light. Every word, every image you receive here is an offering. If you feel this word has touched you today, you can honor it with a sign, right here below, with a donation through the Super Thanks button. It is a small gesture, but it opens great doors. Number 3, the collapse of illusions. They believed their lies were eternal, but truth is always stronger than illusion. Like a house of cards, their deceptions stood only until the wind of revelation began to blow. Psalm 64 verse 8 proclaims, "Their own tongues will ruin them, and all who see them will shake their heads." And you are watching that word unfold in real time. The same words they used to wound you are now the very evidence exposing their schemes. Their false alliances are crumbling, their secrets are unraveling, and their panic is the sound of justice arriving. You don't even need to lift a hand. What collapses now is collapsing by divine decree. Comment: I rise marked by the divine, if you've seen lies around you unravel into dust. And share the moment you knew truth was stronger than their manipulations. Because beyond collapse lies something greater, the inheritance of authority. It often begins with a single moment of clarity, the kind that makes you stop and realize that the story you were told no longer fits. A memory you once dismissed suddenly returns with sharper detail, and this time you can see the lie hidden between the lines. A synchronicity too perfect to ignore arrives, leaving you unable to explain it away as coincidence. This is the first tremor of awakening, the sudden recognition that what seemed confusing was never random at all. Your spirit has begun to connect the scattered dots, and the picture forming is both unsettling and undeniable. Illusion loses its grip the moment truth begins to flicker into awareness. What once bound you in confusion now shatters beneath the weight of revelation. Every symbol, every silence, every repetition you overlooked begins to call out as if coded with meaning. The numbers that followed you, the dreams that returned again and again, the phrases that echoed through strangers' mouths. None of it was accidental. Reality itself becomes a scroll unfolding, written in divine geometry and sacred math that you are only now learning to read. What they thought would remain hidden is now illuminated by the light of recognition. You begin to see that even your delays, your missteps, your detours were chapters encoded to bring you here. The illusions that once seemed unbreakable unravel when the code beneath them is revealed. And as you read, you realize you were never blind. You were waiting for the right season to see. Inside, the transformation accelerates. Your intuition sharpens, picking up details you used to miss with startling precision. What once drained you now repels you, and what once silenced you now triggers a fire inside your chest. Boundaries rise like gates you no longer feel guilty for closing. Your energy begins to discern on its own, responding to environments before your mind has time to rationalize. The inner shifts you once questioned are no longer small. They feel like confirmation written in your very body. What others call paranoia is simply awareness finally speaking with clarity. And though the weight of it feels heavy, the heaviness is proof of the fire rising within. The external world begins to mirror these changes with a precision that startles you. People shift around you, some drawn closer in awe of your light, others fleeing because your presence exposes what they cannot hide. Opportunities appear like doors opening at the exact moment you need them, while resistance also multiplies as shadows scramble to survive. Divine architecture becomes visible, the scaffolding of your destiny emerging in the very fabric of your reality. It feels as though heaven itself is rearranging the stage of your life, pulling down curtains and revealing what was concealed. The lies they built around you stand no chance against the structure rising within you. What is within now echoes without, proving that alignment is both an anchor and a weapon. Then comes the deeper revelation. This is not new, but remembered. Somewhere within your soul, you always knew this moment would come, and the clarity feels like recognition rather than discovery. Dreams you carried for years but could never explain suddenly speak in language you understand. Fragments of visions once dismissed now return as sacred memory, vibrating with timeless significance. The remembrance is not intellectual but cellular, as though your very blood recalls who you were before the world named you otherwise. What rises is ancient, encoded in your soul before you were even born. And in the mirror of remembrance, the collapse of their illusions feels like the unveiling of your true inheritance. With truth uncovered, your destiny ceases to be a question and becomes a command. The future no longer feels like something you must chase or build from scratch. It feels like a memory waiting to be reclaimed. You stop asking for permission to exist, for validation to shine, for approval to stand where you were always meant to stand. You begin to hear prophecy in your own voice, as if the words you speak come from a place deeper than you imagined. Every step forward carries the resonance of divine inevitability. You are no longer creating a path. You are remembering the one carved for you before time began. And in that remembrance, you feel the call to rise as more than survivor, as authority. This is where reclamation begins. You no longer interpret resistance as failure but as the signpost of your power. The attempts to silence you are now understood as proof of the weight you carry. The lies they spread were not the final word, but the evidence that truth was too dangerous to leave unchallenged. You remember that the mirror you hold is not just reflection, but revelation. The light that makes every shadow tremble. Fierce, prophetic energy awakens in your tone, reminding you of what you always owned but forgot how to claim. Their attempts to bury you became the soil where your crown of endurance was forged. And now you rise carrying not their narratives, but your divine authority. Revelation is never the conclusion. It is the invitation to walk forward with eyes unclouded. The collapse of illusions is not the end of your journey, but the beginning of a life aligned with truth. What was hidden was always waiting for your readiness to see it. The lies are crumbling, the schemes are unraveling, and what remains is a foundation that cannot be shaken. You stand not as someone lost, but as someone found in remembrance. Comment, "I walk hidden yet never lost," if this message resonates with the journey your soul has always known, and share the sign, dream, or moment that confirmed it for you. Because what comes after collapse is inheritance, and that is where the next revelation begins to unfold. Number 4, the inheritance of authority. Exposure is never the end, it is the coronation. Zechariah 10 verse 12 declares, "I will strengthen them in the Lord, and in His name they will live securely." The weight you carried has become your crown. The endurance you gained has become your authority. You no longer walk as the one who was deceived, but as the one who carries discernment sharpened by fire. They feared your silence, they feared your fire, and now they will fear the crown that proves you survived it all. What they used against you has been turned into your inheritance, clarity, resilience, and authority that cannot be removed. Comment, "I anchor this truth in my soul," if you know your survival is your coronation, and share the moment you realized your endurance was power. Because what crowns you in silence will reveal you in power, and that unveiling has only just begun. There comes a moment when the whisper of destiny no longer lingers in the distance but thunders inside your bones. You feel it like an ancient voice calling you not forward, but back into the truth you carried before birth. The memory of who you were, hidden beneath years of exile and misunderstanding, begins to rise like smoke from a long-forgotten altar. You sense that the trials you endured were not random events but sacred markers of preparation. Every tear you shed was recorded as ink in the scroll of your inheritance. The pain was not punishment but prophecy shaping your soul into the vessel it was meant to be. And in this remembrance, you realize you were always more than they said you were. Beneath the noise of the world, there has always been a name inscribed on your spirit that no one else could erase. It was not written in human language, but in divine code that speaks through silence, dreams, and fire. You carried it even when you felt invisible, even when no one called you what you truly were. This hidden identity was the seal of your otherness, proof that you never belonged fully to the systems that tried to contain you. Like the sealed scroll in Revelation, it waited for the right moment to be opened, and that moment has come. The world called you weak, strange, too sensitive, but heaven called you chosen, marked, irreplaceable. What was once buried beneath rejection is now being unearthed as your true inheritance. You did not walk uncovered through this journey. Even in silence you wore the cloak of destiny. There was always a mark on you, invisible to most, but undeniable to those with eyes to see. Some recognized it and drew near in reverence, while others saw it and recoiled in fear because your light exposed their shadows. Your energy testified long before your words could, sending signals into every room you entered. The cloak you carried was not for decoration but for protection, a shield woven from the prayers of ancestors and the decrees of heaven. It distinguished you in ways that no disguise could conceal, even when you tried to blend in. And now, what was hidden in secrecy shines openly as proof of your calling. Every path you walked, even those that seemed filled with delays and detours, was written into an ancient contract signed before you were born. The hardships were not accidents, but training fields where your soul learned endurance that could not be broken. The silence you endured was the timing device of eternity, aligning you with moments only heaven could orchestrate. Like stars locked in their appointed orbits, your mission never left you, even when you strayed. There were scrolls sealed with your name that no one else could open, assignments that waited only for your remembrance. Your struggles were not curses but confirmations, sharpening you into the weapon you were destined to be. And now the seal breaks, and your inheritance rises from the ashes of preparation. People's reactions to you have always been more about what you carried than what you did. Some loved you fiercely without reason, because their souls recognized the resonance of your presence. Others hated you instantly, because your very existence mirrored back truths they were unwilling to face. You were a mirror without trying, reflecting authenticity that forced others to confront their masks. This is why betrayal came so easily and admiration came so suddenly. You triggered destinies simply by standing where you stood. The shadow of others rose in the presence of your light, not because you sought exposure, but because light cannot hide itself. Their rejection was never about your worth, but about the weight of what you carried. Your story is not isolated. It is part of a cycle older than empires and deeper than nations. You walk in the rhythm of archetypes that return across time. The prophet cast out, the guardian unrecognized, the rebel breaking chains. Each of them was misunderstood in their generation, yet crowned in the records of eternity. You are not simply enduring personal battles. You are fulfilling prophecies whispered across ages. The same archetypal current that carried Moses through exile and Joseph through betrayal flows through you now. This remembrance lifts you from isolation into cosmic belonging, aligning you with the great tapestry of chosen ones across time. And in that alignment, you stand not just as one, but as many. Chosen one, take this word and let it root deeply in you. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment "I am chosen" to let this message anchor in your soul. Please, share it with someone who needs to hear this. To every member supporting this mission, thank you. Your presence fuels this work. For full prophetic revelations daily, join the membership via the link in the description. Your spiritual path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light. And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the Super Thanks button to support the mission. Every Super Thanks fuels the light we're spreading together. Chosen One, their shadows betrayed them, but your crown was forged in silence. And now, nothing can stop the unveiling of who you truly are.